In 1867, in a small wooden house in Louisiana, a little girl was born. She did not know that one day her name would be written in the history of America. She was born to parents who had once been slaves. She was born in a world that gave her nothing, no power, no money, no education. Her name was Sarah Breedlove, and the world would one day know her as Madam C.J. Walker, the first self-made millionaire woman of America. She lost her parents when she was just 7 years old. She started working in fields, washing clothes, cleaning floors, anything that could earn her a few coins. She was tired, hungry, but never hopeless. Every night she would tell herself, "This is not how my story ends. I will rise. I will make something of myself." Years later, when she was older, her hair began to fall out. She tried every soap, every oil, but nothing worked. She felt broken because her hair was more than just hair. It was pride, it was identity, it was beauty. She looked at herself and said, "I will find a way." She began mixing oils and herbs in her small kitchen. She had no money, no training, no business knowledge, but she had faith. She went door to door selling her homemade hair product. People laughed at her, but she kept walking. One customer became 2, then 10, then 100, and before she knew it, her dream was alive. She called it the wonderful hair grower, and it was more than a product. It was hope for women who had forgotten how to believe in themselves. She started teaching other women how to sell, how to talk, how to lead. She told them, "You are not servants, you are businesswomen, you are leaders." She gave them uniforms. She trained them to stand tall and proud. She called them Walker agents, and through them she built an empire. She turned pain into power and fear into fortune. She opened her own factory in Indianapolis. She built a school for hair care. She taught women how to earn their own money, how to be free, how to believe that they were worth more than the world said they were. She hired hundreds of black women who had never been given a chance and said, "This is your chance, now take it." She became rich, but she never forgot where she came from. She donated to schools, to churches, to civil rights movements. She stood for justice. She said, "I want to use my money to lift my people." She used her success to open doors for others. Her story was not just about business, it was about courage, about rising from nothing, about turning struggle into strength. She showed the world that you do not need to be born rich to make history, you just need to be brave enough to start. She rose from cotton fields to castles, from pain to power, from nobody to a name that still shines after more than a century. She was Madam C.J. Walker, and her story is not about money, it is about the power of believing in yourself. She stood before the mirror one morning looking at her reflection, and she did not see a poor washerwoman anymore. She saw a leader. She saw someone who could change lives. Her company was growing faster than she could imagine. Women from every corner of America were joining her. They were learning, they were earning, and they were rising. She told them, "We are not just selling products, we are selling confidence, we are selling independence, we are selling pride." She traveled from city to city speaking to crowds who had never seen a woman like her. She wore elegant clothes, she carried herself like royalty, but her heart was humble. She remembered the days when she had nothing. She told the women in those crowded halls, "Do not wait for someone to save you, save yourself, build your own door when no one opens one for you." Men in business laughed at her. They said a black woman could not run a company. She smiled and said, "Watch me." She faced racism every day, but she turned every insult into energy, every rejection into motivation. She said, "I have learned that success is not measured by the money you make, but by the lives you touch." Her husband C.J. Walker helped her for a time, but soon they began to disagree. He wanted control, she wanted freedom. He left, but she kept moving. She built the Walker Manufacturing Company by herself. She became the president, the face, and the soul of her empire. Her daughter Lelia joined her, and together they built schools to train young women in business and beauty. They created a sisterhood that spread across the country. The Walker agents became symbols of dignity in every town where they walked. People turned to see them because they looked strong, confident, proud, and free. Madam Walker was now one of the wealthiest black women in America. She had houses, cars, servants. But she did not stop there. She wanted to give back. She started donating to scholarships to black colleges. She supported the young leaders who were fighting for civil rights. She said, "I am not satisfied making money for myself. I want to help my people rise with me." She met Booker T. Washington, one of the great leaders of her time, and told him, "We women are ready to work. We want to be part of the progress. We want to build our nation." He listened and supported her. She attended conferences where she spoke with fire in her voice and truth in her eyes. She told everyone, "I am not ashamed of my color. I am proud of it. My color is my crown." She became a voice for black women everywhere. She reminded them that beauty was not about fitting into the world, but about standing out and shining with your own light. She said, "We have been kept down too long, now we rise together." Her story began to spread. Newspapers wrote about her, magazines called her a miracle woman. But she always said, "I am not a miracle, I am a worker, I am a dreamer. And I am proof that hard work and faith can move mountains." She knew that money was not the goal, it was the tool. Her real dream was to leave something behind that would inspire generations to come, something that would whisper to every little girl born in struggle and say, "You can rise too. You can build, you can lead, you can become anything." She once said, "I had to make my own living and my own opportunity, but I made it. I don't sit down and wait for opportunities to come, get up and make them." And that one line became her legacy. Her company reached thousands. She built training centers across America. Her products were on shelves everywhere from New York to Chicago to St. Louis. Her name became a promise, and her face became hope. She showed that a woman could be both kind and powerful, gentle and fearless. Madam C.J. Walker was no longer just a name, she was a movement. She was living proof that dreams are stronger than any obstacle, and that rise does not begin with success, it begins with struggle. The year was 1915 and Madam C.J. Walker stood at the top of her empire, but even at the height of success she never forgot the streets she once walked barefoot. She would stand in front of her workers and say, "I started with nothing, and if I can rise, so can you." Her words were not speeches, they were fire, they were truth, they were hope for thousands of women who had never been told they could dream. Her business was growing fast. She had more than 20,000 Walker agents working across America. Women who had never been respected now walked with pride. They wore white uniforms with gold buttons, their heads held high and their spirits unshaken. People on the streets would say, "Here comes a Walker woman," and those words meant strength, dignity, and power. Madam Walker opened the Walker College of Hair Culture in Pittsburgh. It was more than a school, it was a place where women learned discipline, confidence, and the art of leadership. She believed that beauty started from within, and that knowledge was the first step to freedom. She taught them that success was not about looking rich, but about thinking rich, about carrying yourself with purpose and pride. Everywhere she went, she spoke about independence. She told women, "Do not wait for anyone to give you a chance. Take it with your own hands, create it with your own mind." She said, "I am not building a business, I am building a generation." But success brought challenges, competition, jealousy, and betrayal began to rise. Her husband C.J. Walker, who once stood by her, now grew distant. He wanted credit, she wanted peace. Their marriage broke, but her spirit did not. She moved to New York to start a new chapter of her life. She built a grand mansion in Irvington called Villa Luero. It was designed by Black architect Vertner Woodson Tandy, and it stood as a symbol of Black excellence. The mansion had shining floors, tall windows, and wide gardens. It was more than a home, it was a message to the world that a Black woman could rise above every barrier. She invited activists, artists, and leaders to her home. She hosted meetings where people planned the future of Black America. She used her success to empower her community. Madam Walker became close to great thinkers like Webb Du Bois and Ida B. Wells. She supported the NAACP. She donated to anti-lynching campaigns. She said, "My people are suffering, and if I have power, I must use it." Her wealth was not for luxury, it was for legacy. She believed that the true measure of success was how many lives you uplifted. But behind all her power, there was still a woman who carried the pain of her past. Sometimes she would sit alone in her big house and remember the little girl who lost her parents. She would close her eyes and whisper, "Thank you, God, for bringing me this far." She never let her fame make her forget her faith. She was humble, grateful, and strong. The newspapers called her the most successful Black businesswoman in America. But to her employees, she was simply Madam. They loved her because she treated them like family. She told them, "Be honest, work hard, and never let fear decide your future." She taught them that beauty was not just on the surface, it was in the courage to keep going when life breaks you down. Her company continued to expand. She sent her products overseas. She dreamed of going global. She said, "One day every woman in the world will know her worth." She wanted her message to cross oceans and touch hearts everywhere. She once said, "There is no royal flower in the garden of beauty. Every woman can be beautiful if she believes in herself." That line became famous. It carried her spirit through generations. Madam C.J. Walker had built more than an empire. She had built an idea that no matter where you start, no matter how poor or broken you are, you can rise. She had proven that success is not luck, it is the courage to keep walking when the road is long and dark. And even as her health began to fade, she never stopped working. She said, "I have been given a purpose, and I will not stop until my work is done." She knew that her time was limited, but her dream was eternal. She said, "When I am gone, my work will speak for me." And it still does. The days were growing quieter in her mansion, but her heart was louder than ever. She woke up before sunrise, walked through her garden, and looked at the sky. She said to herself, "I did not come this far to stop now." She was tired, her body weak, but her mind still burned with ideas. She called her workers, her students, her friends, and said, "We have more to build, more to teach, more to change." Madam C.J. Walker was no longer just a businesswoman. She had become a movement, a symbol for every woman who had ever been told she was less than enough. She traveled city to city giving speeches to women who stood in crowded halls, their eyes filled with tears, their hearts beating with hope. She said, "Sisters, I was once like you, poor, alone, afraid, but I decided to rise, and if I can, so can you." Her voice carried power because it came from truth. She had known hunger, she had known pain, she had known the taste of failure. And yet she rose again and again. She said, "I built my business on faith, on hard work, and on the love I have for my people." She told young girls, "Your skin is your crown, wear it with pride. Your hair is your story, let it shine." She gave money to schools, she built homes for the poor, she helped fund campaign against injustice. She said we cannot wait for others to lift us, we must lift ourselves. She saw beauty in unity and power in education. Her dream was not to be remembered as rich, but as useful as someone who made a difference. In her mansion she often hosted Black artists, writers, and activists. The rooms would fill with laughter, music, and deep conversation. They planned a future where Black men and women would walk free and proud. She believed in community. She said we rise higher when we rise together. Her daughter Lelia, who later changed her name to Amelia, continued working beside her. Together they expanded the Walker School for Beauty Culture. They trained women to think like leaders, not followers. Madam Walker told them your hands can earn, but your mind can create, and that is the real power. She had lived a life full of challenges, but she faced them with grace. She told her students, when life closes doors, build your own house. She believed that success was not about how high you climb, but about how many you bring with you. She never forgot the women who helped her, the customers who trusted her, the agents who believed in her dream. She called them my sisters in success. By 1919 her health began to decline, but she refused to rest. She still held meetings, wrote letters, planned donations. She said, my work is my prayer, and I will pray until my last breath. Her doctors told her to stop, but she smiled and said, how can I stop when so many still need hope? In the spring of that year she lay in her room surrounded by her family and her workers. She whispered softly, if I have done anything good, let it continue. If I have lifted anyone, let them lift others. She closed her eyes and her journey came to peace, but her story did not end that day. News spread across America. Thousands of women wept in beauty schools and salons, in small houses everywhere. Her name was spoken with love and pride. She had died, but she had left behind an army of women who would carry her mission forward. They would build, they would teach, they would rise. Her mansion became a place of history. Her products continued to sell. Her message continued to spread through generations. Her dream lived on in every woman who refused to give up, in every heart that still believed in the power of rising. Today when people say Madam C.J. Walker, they do not just think of a millionaire, they think of strength, of vision, of courage. She became the voice of possibility. She became the proof that dreams can bloom even in the hardest soil. And her words still echo through time. Do not wait for opportunities to come, get up and make them, because the story of Madam C.J. Walker is not just her story, it is every woman's story who dared to rise when the world told her she could not. Years passed and the world began to change, but her name never faded. Her story whispered through generations, from mothers to daughters, from teachers to students, from dreamers to doers. In every corner of America there were women who said, if Madam C.J. Walker could rise, so can I. Her company continued through her daughter, who kept her mother's dream alive, spreading beauty and pride in every city. The Walker Empire became a symbol of Black excellence. It was not just about hair, it was about history. It was about showing that a woman could lead, that a woman could build, that a woman could change the world. Her name became a lesson in schools. Her picture hung on walls. Her words became quotes that pushed people forward. Decades later, when people talked about entrepreneurship, they spoke her name. When they talked about Black history, they spoke her name. When they talked about courage, they spoke her name. She had started with nothing, and she gave the world something priceless, a reason to believe. Her home, Villa Luro, became a monument, a living memory of what one woman achieved against all odds. Presidents, artists, and business leaders visited that place to feel her energy, to see where a dream was born. The walls of that house still carried her voice, saying, keep rising, keep believing, keep building. In 2020, Netflix released a series about her life, and millions around the world saw her journey. They cried, they felt inspired, they understood what it means to fight with grace and rise with faith. Her story reached new generations who had never heard her name before. Now they knew, now they believed. Women from every race found strength in her words. They started businesses, they built brands, they became leaders, and every time someone asked them what inspired you, many of them said Madam C.J. Walker, because she proved that it does not matter how you start, what matters is how you rise. Today her legacy lives in beauty schools, in Black-owned businesses, in women who refuse to give up. She stands as a light for those who work in silence, as a voice for those who are told they cannot. She is the past and the future. She is proof that dreams can outlive time. Her name is written not just in history books, but in the hearts of those who rise. Her journey reminds the world that power does not come from wealth. It comes from will, from courage, from faith. She showed that success is not about being first, it is about opening the door for those who come after. Every time a woman starts her own business, every time someone says I can make it, every time someone chooses to rise, that is Madam C.J. Walker living again. Her dream still breathes in every act of courage, in every story of hope. She planted a seed that keeps growing even a century later. So when you feel lost, when you feel small, when the world tells you you are not enough, remember her story. Remember the woman who built an empire with her hands, her heart, and her faith. Remember the name that began in struggle and ended in triumph. Remember Madam C.J. Walker, because her story is not about how she lived, it is about how she rose, and how her rise taught the world that nothing is impossible.